Hey everyone. So I thought this would be easier for some reason than writing a long email trying to explain how the meeting went last night. For some reason, I just think I would be better doing doing it this way. So last night, right after church, we had a meeting about Act One and the Hub meeting with us or occupying space in our building. And basically, the way that we talked about it, if you look back at the email that I sent you, is that we're looking at having them be um, in the old childcare wing, but then maybe using some other space like the Christian education wing, at least for a little bit. So the plan that we've kind of looked at is Act One having the space um, in kind of two different phases. So the first phase was we don't do anything to the space besides just clean it up. And then they have a couple of very small groups in there a couple of times a week. So they would have theater classes, theater groups, that kind of thing, singing. But they'd be there on like Monday evening and Saturday during the day. And this would all have to be, of course, coordinated and arranged. But those are the two dates that we're talking about. And we're talking about like 6 to 10 people. Um, so that would be the first phase that we're hoping will happen just in this church calendar year. So starting in September and then moving um, until the end of the school year, because they will continue to have operations in other places, in Glenshaw and in Wexford. Um, and then, so either we wouldn't have really much of a rental agreement with them or something very minimal because they're just getting started. They're going to be finding students who can come to this particular location. And then the second phase is about them being there more permanently, us working with them in terms of um, uh, how we have to change the space in order to, make it so it's something that they're there more permanently. And so that would, we'd have to discuss cost and who pays for it, and how the hub gets involved, and those types of things. That's kind of where we were. And so the conversation that we had with about seven session members went well. This came, of course, after the task force and I um, had a meeting with Act One and with Scott Pavlot about this arrangement. So it seems like it would, in the first phase, while we figured out, does this work for us long term? Um, you know, where do we find the funds to make any changes to the child care center wing that we need to? Um, you know, all of that stuff would need to be worked out in that first phase. And if it didn't work, if the money couldn't be found, fundraising couldn't be done, grants couldn't be found, et cetera, then we wouldn't have to go any further than to have them there in that first year, because it's kind of a trial. So we talked about that a lot. Now, some of the things that we found out was, Act One has its own all of its own insurance, and they're going to be getting us that information. All of their teachers have their clearances, and they're going to be sending us that information. And I talked with Elf and Wild Presbyterian. They have been renting space to Act One for almost 20 years without any issues. And so I just contacted the presbytery to see how do we make those arrangements? Like, what kind of contractual obligations do we need to put in place in order to make even the phase one part work? And then, of course, if it was going to be a longer term, then we would need to rewrite that with a rental agreement and that type of thing. So really what we're talking about in the first phase is just allowing a group to come and use space a couple of times a week. And, a group that has a long standing, there's other churches that allow them to do this. They have insurance and clearances, and we're going to be looking up all that. So as soon as I get the information from them about clearances and um, the insurance and that kind of thing, I'll pass it along to everyone. Because those were the biggest concerns that we got basically in the room were, do they have those things? Can we see them? We want to make sure that we're comfortable with those things before we move forward with this plan. So that was basically what I was asked to do in order to make this a comfortable exchange. What the hub and Act One are going to be working out here over the course of this first phase is, can the hub find um, families in need, basically kids who are in households that are struggling with drug addiction or other issues, and recruit those kids, identify and recruit kids who are in those situations, and then find scholarships when necessary in order to allow them to be a part of this program. And Scott from the Hub has done a lot of research on the effectiveness of the arts when it comes to kids who are in this family situation. And that's the target, that's the goal. Now, at first, we would simply have Act One's current roster of students coming, not all of them, obviously, but some of them who live close to our area. Those would be the kids that we would hope would start coming this fall. And then as we start to kind of get an understanding of who the hub can recruit and find, how we can advertise that, how we can get in front of social workers or other folks who can maybe spread the word about this program. That's what we're trying to establish, which is why we're doing it in two phases. And in the first one, we're not going to be changing our building at all, just allowing them to have space. So again, the conversation went well. The program, has, I think, one of the things to really be cognizant of moving forward is that this is um, a small amount of space and kids at first. But if we moved into the second phase, obviously that would be a big change to the church. Um, More kids in the space, more consistently. The use of resources, just like the Child Care Center had. They used heat and water and all that stuff. This program would then be doing the same. And again, there's a lot to work out in terms of how we would have to change the wing to accommodate, dance and singing and that kind of thing, mirrors and floors and changing the walls and that. But that can't happen until we have a base of students that warrant that, and a partnership with Act One and the Hub that allows for us to justify those changes. So, really, what we're asking for currently is, are we okay with this first phase, just allowing the small group of kids to use the space a couple of times a week, and then seeing how that goes, allowing that trial to kind of take its course, and then invest some time and energy in seeing if the second phase is possible, um, assuming that they can do what we're asking. Um, the Presbytery gives us guidance on how to um, get a contract together with an organization like this one. Um, do they meet all of our requirements in terms of insurance, in terms of clearances for their teachers and their staff, um, and are we able to work those elements out? I've made contacts with the other churches that they rent space from, two other churches they rent space from currently. And so I'm waiting to hear back from them. I've contacted the Presbytery. They're sending me some information about how that works. And I've also asked Act One to send me clearance information and insurance information, which is all the things that were asked of me um, to make this work. So that's the update. I'm sure you have questions. My gut says that over the next couple of days, I'll be receiving all this information. And those of you who could not be in the meeting, we'll have one more chance to meet together. Hopefully this week, but maybe next week, depending on how that works out. We don't want to rush anything, but we're not hoping to delay for any particular reason either. What was agreed upon in the room was, as soon as we have all the information that makes us feel comfortable, then we can vote to do this or not do it based on all the information that's given. So that was one of the things we wanted to make sure happened, that we weren't delaying for no reason, but we're doing all of our due diligence. And so making sure we feel comfortable with who they have been, the rental agreements they've reached in the past, that we know that the presbytery is on board and happy, that they have all the insurance and clearances that we would expect, and that they can sign this agreement in a comfortable way. That would be for phase one, and then we would see how it goes, and then look into phase two. So I thought this was easier to do than just writing a whole long email. If you have questions for me personally, that's perfectly fine. The group that was in with Act One was myself, Jack Swick from Stewardship and Finance, Ken Yost, who's a part of the task force, Larry and Paula, who are also on the task force. So we were in that meeting with Act One. So if you have any questions, you can ask them as well. I think that's all I have. Thanks for your attention. Again, if you have any questions, let me know.